I guess officially I want to welcome you.
Oh,
Thanks for joining me, Jade. And for anybody who doesn't know, Jade Medeiros is a former Key Assets employee.
man.
We miss her. We wish she was still here, but she's moved out to Moncton, New Brunswick. And
Yes, I
so
have.
she's joining us today to chat a little bit about World Down Syndrome Day.
Yeah.
March the 21st is designated as World Down Syndrome Day. And that's when the World Health Organization, WHO, kind of says this is the day. It's a special day. So Jade's our expert, our in-house. We're going to call her our in-house expert, right? Because she
No,
was,
let me teach you to sound better.
yeah. Well, you were here at Key Assets. You're still our in-house person. We're going to call you our expert because you know
All
all of.
right.
I want to say you know everything there is to know, or a whole lot more than we all know about Down syndrome.
I do
So
know a few things, I'm
yeah.
sure.
So thank you so much for joining us. I just wanted to acknowledge that I know this is a, a a heart topic for you, right? It's personal.
Yes.
It's right at your heart, right at your home. Jade has a little guy who is diagnosed with Down syndrome.
Hmm.
His name is Colton. He is the cutest little
He's
guy.
going to be 7 this year.
Wow, 7? Seriously, 7?
He'll be 7 in June.
See, and I
I
remember back in the
can't.
day when Colton was born. I
I
remember when he
know.
was
I
born.
know.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my God, it's been so fast. Like
yeah.
they grow so fast. It's
Well, and
crazy.
it's funny because I follow your journey a little bit with Colton, and I'm just like, he's such a little guy that you don't necessarily recognize that he's 7, right? That he's grown up that much.
I know
So
because he's teeny, teeny, tiny.
yeah, he is. He is, eh? So is he like, just stature wise, just generally smaller?
Um, yes,
Yeah.
to a degree he is, but most people in general with Down syndrome have
Yeah.
smaller stature anyway.
Okay.
It's part of the genetic part of it.
Yeah.
Not all of them, however, a good amount are
Okay.
fairly small. Although when they get big older, they do tend to gain weight faster.
Right.
Uh, and it depends also. Some of them don't have a shut off for food. So
Right.
they always feel hungry or they don't know when they're full.
Right.
So some of them can gain weight quite quickly if you're not watching
Right.
or aware of that situation. Now Colton doesn't have that issue. He doesn't eat anything, but
He doesn't like food, eh?
he's not a big like he eats like 4 things. Like
Huh?
honey,
Okay.
that's what
So
he
what are
likes.
his 4 things? What does he like?
He eats hot dogs, but only
Yeah.
the Costco all beef
I love
ones.
that he only likes a certain hot dog.
Oh
That's
yeah, like no,
impressive.
it's a thing. It's a
Yeah.
thing. Like every time we go camping, I buy the cheap ones. He's like, like I'm good.
Not doing
No,
it.
not doing it. And then he likes only whole wheat bread.
Okay,
And
that's impressive. Most kids are white bread eaters, so come on, that's good.
I tried when he was little, and I realized that he was going to be super picky. That
Yeah.
I tried to pick like the healthiest version
Yeah.
of the things that he does like. So then now he won't eat like white bread. He doesn't think that it's bread, and he won't eat any bread that doesn't look like a slice of toast. Is
Oh,
essentially like if it's not whole wheat sliced bread, he
yeah.
is not eating it.
So it needs to look like the Wonder Bread or
Essentially,
whatever
yes,
bread. Yeah.
yeah, and he likes peanut butter and jam. Peanut butter and jam are like a staple.
Yeah.
Like, what are we gonna feed Colton? Peanut butter and
Peanut
jam.
butter jam. Yeah.
And he likes chicken nuggets and chicken strips. Okay, so well, chicken, but he won't eat any other type of chicken. Like it has to be, and it won't be, can't be a chicken burger, can't be anything else,
Has to be
just
like
strips
finger
or
foods.
nuggets. Yes. And
Yeah.
he likes French fries some days.
Okay.
Some days he doesn't. And then he likes oatmeal a lot. He really likes his oatmeal and he really likes rice cakes. So
That's quite
and
an
then
interesting plethora of options of food that
like
he
the
likes, right?
weirdest stuff. Like
Like how
it's
are those
super weird.
combinations come together? I don't know, but
I don't know. And
doesn't
like to get him
matter.
to try new things is like no. If it doesn't like fit in his like no. And he doesn't eat
Nothing.
really like he doesn't eat cookies. He doesn't eat cake. He doesn't eat
Okay.
muffins.
Like he's missing out on all the good things in life. Come on, cookies
I
and
keep
cakes.
trying. I'll be like, here, have some cake. Like here,
Chocolate
have like
cake. How
don't
do you
eat it.
not want
No,
chocolate
he
cake?
wants popcorn.
Popcorn.
And
Okay.
that is it.
He's got a
So
bit of a
that's
healthy
kind of
palate,
where he
although
is.
I didn't hear any vegetables there. So I guess vegetables are not a part of that palette, right?
No, so he gets supplement, like a little pill that is
Yep.
like almost like phytovitamin or phyto vegetables because he
Yep.
won't eat them. He
Yep.
will eat fruit, like
Okay.
he likes berries and
Yep.
strawberries and apples and oranges,
Yep.
but he doesn't eat any veggies. He won't do it. Oh, I lie. He likes peas.
Okay.
They have to be fresh peas, and most of the time they have to be from the garden. Otherwise, he gets kind of weird about them.
Oh, wow. Well, but you know what? You figured these things out, right? And the fact
Yeah,
is he's eating. So you know what? You go, okay, this is good. He's eating. May not be exactly what I want him to eat, but the fact of the matter is he's eating, and that's a good sign, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Does chicken strips and he likes those. So I just
Yeah.
like send his fruit and his granola bar. He likes, do you know Made Good?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So he likes only the chocolate Made Good granola bar, no
Okay.
other kinds of any type of granola bar at all will he eat, but those he will eat no matter what. So
Well, so
like
you
we
figured those
always have
things
them.
out then. This is, you know what? You're 10 steps ahead of the game. You figured out what he likes.
I'm
So
like,
you can
okay.
be equipped at all times with all the staples that are necessary.
I mean, they're easy to find and they're
Yep.
easy to like, it's just every time I'm like, do you want spaghetti? Like he will not touch pasta. Like that is not
No.
a thing, which is funny because a lot of his friends with Down syndrome don't have these like weird issues with
Yep.
food. So they eat whatever. And he's the one that's like, no, no,
Yeah,
I'm good.
he's got his preferences for what he likes.
It is what it is. So
It
we're
is
just
what
like,
it is. Yeah.
one day, maybe when he's big and he wants to try stuff, he will. Otherwise, like, all right, Colton, you'll eat this. Fine. Have at her, kiddo.
Go for
So
it,
that's
right?
where
Well,
we're
and I
at with
saw him the
that.
other day licking his pizza crust.
Yes.
So I don't think he
Yeah.
likes sauce, right? But he likes the crust.
He likes the crust. He doesn't mind sauce. He likes pepperonis, but he
Okay.
doesn't like cheese
Okay, no
at
cheese.
all
Okay.
on anything. He makes me pick off the cheese on all pizza at all times. He does not eat it
So then
ever.
it's not really pizza in my mind.
No, I agree, but that is what he likes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he'll eat pizza as long as it doesn't have cheese on it.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
okay,
you know
cool.
what? Pizza, if that's what his pizza looks like, that's what it looks like.
I
So
mean, it is what it is.
yeah,
Otherwise, like, I mean, like junk food, he'll eat
yeah,
cheesy and all that junk, but he
of
won't eat
course.
anything sweet. So,
Yeah,
I'm
there you go.
he's
All
not
right.
done.
So World Down Syndrome Day is March 21st. Are you guys
Yes.
doing, are you doing anything for it? Is there anything that represents, I know that I've seen you post things about funky socks in the past. Is that associated
So
with
yeah,
World Down
so
Syndrome Day?
that's the thing. It is because the chromosomes, if you look at chromosomes, they look like socks. So when you look
Ah,
at the three, they look like mismatched socks. So mismatched socks are kind of a big deal that day. So everybody, we just bought some actually from the Down syndrome to support Down syndrome Niagara. My friend's little boy's class, they made 300 pairs of tie-dye socks
oh,
and then
oh,
sold them.
cool.
So we got them express shipped to us so that
Yeah.
we could wear them and support Austin's class. But yeah, so there's 3 copies of the 21st chromosome, March 21st. So the third month, the 21st day.
Yeah.
Um, so here we're doing flag raising in Dieppe, Moncton, and Riverview. So the mayors come out and we come and we let our membership know that that's what we're doing. All over the place, there's different stuff going on. So it all depends on your Down Syndrome Association,
Right.
what's going on. So there's Peel near you, Toronto has one, Hamilton has a lot going on. They have their own office. They have a
Oh,
massive Down
wow.
syndrome.
Okay. So that's good to know because that's local to
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yes, and they're the former president. I think she's still on the board, but she also works with the Ontario Down Syndrome Association.
Right.
Um, they do massive conferences every year at Great Wolf Lodge. So
Oh, okay.
the Down syndrome boards members can go. So you just have to look into it with your local board, whether or
Right.
not they're sending people, or if you want to go, you can just pay and go. Niagara's board, a few of their members are on the Down Syndrome Ontario board as well. One of them is
Right.
involved, does their social media and all that. So there's a lot going on in Ontario for sure. I know that the falls have been turned blue and yellow before for World Down Syndrome
Oh,
Day.
how cool is that?
Yeah,
How cool is that?
it all depends on where you are,
Right.
what's happening. Here we're doing the flag raising, and then our local hockey team is doing they gave us free tickets. So we're taking our whole membership to the Wildcats game and we're all gonna wear blue and yellow and whatever to celebrate. Because there's a gentleman on our board who volunteers with the hockey team also.
Okay.
He's their equipment manager. And I think in Niagara they're going to a hockey game as well. And there's this society or group in Niagara called GMAX, and
Yeah.
it was started by a former NHL player. and he's a firefighter in Burlington. And it's an incredible group. They do all kinds of stuff for the Down syndrome community. They have a scholarship to go to school because Niagara Community College has spaces for people with special needs. So they do a whole scholarship thing with them.
So, and that's
So I don't know what's
important to
going on
know
with it.
though. Like that's so important to know, right?
Yeah,
That there's scholarships available and post-secondary education opportunities for
of
young
course.
adults, young people with Down syndrome,
Yeah,
right? Like I think that maybe we wouldn't all be aware of that, right? Like scholarships, yes, but actual opportunities for education, right?
yeah, of course.
Yeah,
And you know, it's funny because it all is different depending on where you are. So
right.
like in Toronto, there's that Holland Blue, what's that?
Holland
That
Bloorview,
yes.
Holland
So they
Bloorview,
work a lot with like they have OT and physio and speech and all that kind of stuff. And then
right?
Niagara has the Niagara Children's Center and they have a specialized school. They do a lot of recreational stuff. The Jays Foundation does a lot of they have baseball teams for kids with special needs. So a lot of kids with Down syndrome do that.
Right.
There's Special Olympics, so they have all different types of sports going on, and they're all over. So I bet you Peel, Toronto, all of them have their version of it as well. And they have like here we have Active Start also, which is for
Right.
3 to 12-year-olds, and it's all like strength building and stuff like that. So you really just have to like look in to see what's available through Special Olympics, through whatever community living usually has some stuff
Right.
going on. It's pretty and
So
like those
where
are all
recommendations
over.
of where you would find all of these programs, right? Like, would you go to the Down Syndrome Association in your community? Like that would be the smartest thing is Down Syndrome Peel or
Mhm.
Hamilton or
Connect
wherever
with
you
your
happen
the
to live.
first place you go is your community Down syndrome association, which you can Google online and find
Yeah.
whoever you need to connect with. And then usually they have like a parent liaison. They have someone who can support the parent like in finding things. So there's also funding. So in Ontario there's special services at home
Right.
funding, so you get it's funding for like sports, for activities that normal like not like speech and OT, but like
Right.
say you want to do music therapy or whatever,
Horseback
which by the
riding
way,
or something
yes.
like
And
that. Because I
speech,
feel like Colton was doing horseback riding at one point.
he
So that's
did
why I
he
say
did
that.
horseback riding, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And
Yeah.
I highly recommend. It was I wish they had it here. It's an hour and a half away from me, so I
Oh,
can't
wow.
take it right now. But music therapy was incredible, especially if you have little guys with
Yeah.
Down syndrome. It helps with speech. It helps with like literally everything. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And then there's also Easter seals.
Oh,
So in
okay.
Ontario, you can get funding for diapers past the age of 3, I think it is. Like once you're supposed to be done with
Right.
diapers, you
Yeah.
can step in and they'll give you extra funding towards your diapers. You have to prove with like receipts and stuff, but they'll give you
Right.
up to, I think we had up to $400 a year to pay for pull-ups and things like that for him.
Which is great
Um,
because I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this, but I would guess that toileting and all of those things take a little bit longer, right? To
they
master
do.
those skills.
We definitely do. Colton is almost there. We are so close. He still has some accidents. Usually it's because he's busy. So think Colton is 7, going to be 7, but I would say age wise, like he's probably 3 in
Okay.
some
So
areas.
developmentally at about a kind of 3 year
Yeah,
old level.
developing
Yeah.
around 3. So he's almost there.
Right.
So the other thing you need to like little guys with Down syndrome, 7 and 8 is usually the hardest 2 years. Why? Because they are tantruming like they're 3 and 4 years old, but
Right.
they're 7 and 8. So people have a hard time realizing like, yes, he's 7, but cognitively and emotionally, some of the places in his mind are 3 years old.
Right.
So he will sit like get on top of people and he'll bust things down and
Yeah.
laugh about it and like silly things like that where or he'll have a meltdown because he doesn't want to leave the house or
Right.
whatever, just like your 3-year-old was melting down.
Yeah.
And that's where like potty training and stuff, it's usually around 7, 6, 7 and 8 is usually when they start to potty train, just because it takes longer for them to feel it. A
Right.
lot of them are really tiny, so their bodies are smaller in general, and like takes a while to get that build up that
Yeah.
capacity to hold things in.
Yeah.
So
It says I don't I can wait and go to the washroom, or I know I need to go to the
yeah.
washroom now.
And
Okay.
then they're like busy playing and they
Yeah.
don't want to stop playing. And like just those sorts of things you just kind of have to be mindful
Yeah.
with Down syndrome. I mean, otherwise, like he goes to school, he plays, he talks, he He has friends that gets invited to birthday parties. He does stuff.
So
Now
lots
he
of
talks
traditional
a lot.
regular kid things.
Yes,
Yes, which is
most
really
of them
great to
are.
hear.
Most of them are fairly like, even if they're not speaking,
Yeah,
they're usually fairly outgoing, friendly. Kids usually migrate to them. The biggest thing I find is that we're constantly telling Colton how to behave with kiddos, but
right.
I have to teach the other kids, like, you just need to slow down. You need to tell him what you want.
Yeah,
You need to take a minute and listen to what he's saying. Or if they sign, like, this is what that sign means, so that the
right.
kids understand them a little better. And we found our friends out here, they were reading books to their kids about Down syndrome and
Oh, that's
explaining things.
awesome. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Like talk about
so
being a
it
great community,
really
right?
helps. Oh my God, it was
Yeah,
amazing. And so from then they were like, oh, okay, like if I take a minute, Colton can play. I just have to like tell him more what I want him to do,
yeah,
or be more clear when I say stop it. I don't want you to do that. Like, make sure that I either say that or I go get someone to help me when he's overexcited. So it was a lot of like teaching other kids really how to be more patient with
and I
him.
think that's such a really good perspective. Like, I work at Key Assets. You were here at Key Assets, and one of the things we always talked about was how to foster children who are coming into care and what their life experiences are, and that patience you have to develop, and sometimes you have to amend how you're going to parent
Yeah.
because of what their experiences were of trauma. And you're kind of saying the same type of thing, is that sometimes it's about the people who are interacting with Colton who have to look out, offering that patience, asking the
Yes.
questions, being, cognitive of how he's interacting with them, because his developmentally, he's not at the same level they're at, right? And so it's about
Exactly.
giving him that time and that space. So that's really important to know. Like that, I think is so helpful, right?
Well, I mean, people forget that, right? Because like the kids don't know that. So
Yeah.
you have to show them. And I find with Colton and his friends, most of the kids are really patient. And like he has a couple little buddies that like they find him on the playground, they pick him up, they play with him, they take him by the hand and he go like he'll
Oh,
play forever.
yeah.
Um, but they've learned that like how to communicate with it. And he talks. So that's a little different. I find when the kiddos don't speak as well, it's harder for the other
Right.
kids to understand what they want. So that takes a little bit more like, hey, we have to stop and see what they want. And they're
Mhm.
a lot of them sign really well. So if you're parenting like a foster kiddo with Down
Yeah.
syndrome, like sign language is amazing with them. Colton signed forever.
And that was one of the things I was going to ask you, is is there anything you would recommend, right? So you're the mom of a little guy with Down syndrome. He was born with Down syndrome. He's now almost 7. I think I'm okay to say, because you told me I can say whatever I want, is that
Yeah.
you didn't know that he was going to have Down syndrome when he was
No.
born. And
No.
so that was something you had to then figure out. It wasn't like you got to do all sorts of research before he was born to kind of prepare yourselves for it, right? You
I had
literally were
no
thrown
idea.
into it.
Yeah.
And that would be similar to kind of our foster parents, right? Who have maybe never parented a child with Down syndrome and maybe would be a little bit nervous or scared to say, okay, yes, I'm going to take that child, because they're not sure what to expect. So any words of wisdom or recommendations around caring for a child who has Down syndrome?
Honestly, the biggest things I've learned. So first of all, that when I had him and I started talking to other parents, and I have a couple of friends who have adopted children with Down syndrome and
Okay.
fostered them.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is like it's the jackpot of the jackpot of the disability world, essentially.
I
There,
love it. The jackpot.
yes. Usually they're not highly aggressive. They're
Right.
not. I mean, Colton he'll whack you, of course. When he's frustrated, think 3-year-old, like
Yeah.
he's gonna give you a
And that's
smack, but
such a good thing to remember, right? Is you just said it. Think 3-year-old. Yes,
yeah,
age chronologically says 7, but think 3-year-old. When
yep,
my child was 2 or 3, they did those things because they
yep,
didn't have the developmental and the emotional capacity to
yeah,
explain to me why they were upset, or to explain to me that I wanted
100%.
that banana and you didn't give it to me, or I wanted that TV show. So it all makes perfect sense when you look at it from, like kind of
Yeah,
the developmental
like
stage.
100% look at it like patience. 100% you're going to need patience because they take forever. Like they are slow folks. It is like genetically in them they are just slow.
Yeah.
Everything, and it's not like they're slow because they're slow. They're slow because they just like Colton takes his time to put his boots on, and like he can put his own boots on, he can put his jacket on, he can zip with help, he can do all of those things. They took
Yeah.
longer to do, but he can do them. But then it takes him longer to do it. And if you rush him, that's when he gets angry.
Yeah.
And he gets upset because he's like, you're rushing me. I
So
don't
patience
want to
is
be
key.
rushed.
Patience is key.
Patience is key.
I remember seeing a video you posted of him mastering putting on his socks.
Yes.
And it was such a big deal and he was so proud, but it clearly was patience is key, 100%.
Patience is 100% key. The other thing I would say is that when they're learning to do things, you've got, like, it may take him 10 minutes to put his socks on. I don't let him usually in the morning when I'm trying to get him out the door for school because it's just too much.
It's like, we've got to go. Come on, let's go.
Well, there's just so much going on that, like, I've already expected him to get up, come downstairs, eat breakfast, get, like, I need to help you get dressed. We need to get out the door. You need to get to school. Like, there's a lot happening and there's so many transitions that I find if I pick his clothes for him and I help him get dressed, that's one less thing that he's stressing about. But then he has to put his boots on and his coat. And I always have everything set out for them.
Okay, just so organization is also key. Being prepared and being organized.
Yes, be prepared, which I mean is the same for any other kid. Yeah. It's just that with him, like with kiddos with Down syndrome, things are going to take longer. Know that they're stubborn. They're so friggin' stubborn. It does not matter. They're all stubborn, I swear. And like
so you hear that from your friends who have kids with Down syndrome?
Oh, 100%. Like they're all stubborn. They're all stubborn, all of them. And I mean, to varying degrees. And I mean, mostly it's like, I don't want to be rushed. I don't want to transition yet. I'm not ready. He'll tell you, I'm not ready yet. Okay, but Colton, we need to go.
Yeah.
I'm still not ready yet. And then he'll
I love that he's being honest about it though. He's being honest. I'm not ready.
I'm not ready yet. I'm just not ready yet. So those are the biggest things, knowing that, like, once you get to know a child with Down syndrome, usually you can tell, like, chronologically, like, I know some things he said he's older than his sister on, like, he's much more patient with little kids than she is. And like, he sometimes listens a whole lot better than his little sister does. And he doesn't argue back as much as his sister does. And those sorts of things. He also, you'll find either they sleep really well or kiddos with Down syndrome do not sleep very well. And it really depends. Most of the kiddos I know do sleep very well, but the ones that I know that don't, like, they're up in the middle of the night.
They're all night.
They're all night. And usually it's like you need to sleep with them to get them to sleep.
And so you are lucky because Colton sleeps, yes?
Yeah, he sleeps 12 hours every night.
Oh,
and most of his friends do. Most of his little friends do. There's, I think, like 3 or 4. It's like a thing. It's not all of them, but the ones that do, they're wake up often in the night. Now, a lot of them suffer from sleep apnea. That is a huge thing. With
even as young children, even as children. Yes. Okay. Yes. I didn't know that. That's really key to know.
So a lot of kiddos that haven't had checkups for that kind of stuff, that may be why they're waking up in the night, because they have sleep apnea. And once that's figured out, usually things get better.
Okay. That's good.
And the other thing is that they usually have to have their tonsils and adenoids and all that stuff removed just to help them breathe. And again, sleep apnea. ADHD, usually fairly often, not always, I don't want to say like blanket it, but fairly often they do have a dual diagnosis. So that makes it fun and interesting. But I mean, it's not, again, they're not really aggressive. They're not unable to communicate. If you give them a way to communicate, I have a friend who has a little guy, he uses PICS or PECS.
Okay. Yeah. PECS. Yeah.
I know multiple bilingual children with Down syndrome here who are the same age as Colton. They speak both French and English.
I love what you are saying right now, because what you're actually doing, which I would ask you, is like, what are some of the myths, right? Like, you just told me that there's lots of children who, they're children, not even adults, children who are bilingual and they're on the Down syndrome, right? And you're just like, they've got that diagnosis, but yet they're bilingual, right? They're using PECS, right? They're able to communicate. Maybe they don't have words, but they're able to use PECS, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know, like, I think those are great things to dispel, because I think often we as society sometimes have, you know, our own ideas of what we believe based on what we've seen on the internet or what we see out in the community or whatever.
A lot of the little guys that I know, so there's a lot of them that are bilingual. PECS are used often. Sign language is massive, especially if you have little ones that you can start when they're really young, because it really gives them a way to communicate without, especially if they just don't have that. A lot of kiddos with Down syndrome understand what you're saying, but their verbal output, that's hard. some of it has to do with low tone. Their tongues it's a muscle, right? So they're
Yeah.
usually pretty low tone and they're big and they're usually bigger in their mouth. So it makes it
Okay.
harder to pronounce words the same way that other children learn how to do it. So and then
So
they
it's a
may have,
skill. It's a skill. Like you just said,
yeah,
their tongue's a muscle, right? I never really thought about it. Like I think I knew that, but it's in my mind, right? Is that they have to develop that muscle, right? And
yes,
so we all do in order to talk. But as you said, if a
takes
young
longer.
person with Down syndrome is bigger in the mouth and their tongue is bigger, then you have to work harder to develop that muscle.
Yep. And they have
So
a lot of
important to
times
know,
hypomia comes with like loose ligaments.
right?
So like moving your mouth is harder to do. Learn like strengthening all that takes longer.
Right.
Um, that's a big one also. They're like jelly people. So like physical exercise, getting them walking, getting them to in sports,
Yeah.
swimming, whatever you can to like help build up that muscle tone is huge. Letting them play, like they play just like other kids. Like Colton, he climbs all the jungle gyms the other kiddos do. He
Right.
runs, played every sport you could possibly think of. Now, not all of them are for Colton.
I can say I've seen you register him in all sorts of things, soccer and baseball and horseback.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, oh my
everything.
gosh, this young man is doing so much, but so great. Like it's so great to see.
Well, I mean, I figured I'll try it all out and see where he wants. So
Yeah.
this week he's going to try cheerleading because he really likes going to the cheer gym. So I was
Well, I was
like,
gonna say his
"Ah,
sister does
try it."
cheerleading, right? Charlotte does.
Well, she
Or
does
she
not
was.
enjoy it.
Oh,
She is not a team player, as she says.
she says
So
this. She's 5. She's
when she
5.
was 2.5, 3, when she was 3, maybe 2.5, 3, we put them in T-ball and
Yeah.
Colton, it was too slow for T-ball. Colton can throw and hit a ball like nobody's business, but
Yeah.
it's too slow, the weighting through he
Yeah.
doesn't do well the weighting. If it went faster, I think he would really love it. And maybe when he's a little bit bigger, because the kid can hit a ball like nobody's business. But
Nice.
she literally walked away and was like, I'm not a team player. This is not for me. And walked into the field and sat down and that was it. And I was like, okay. So
I
every
love
week
it. She is her own woman at 5. She
absolutely
knows
not.
what it is she likes and what it is she doesn't like. And she's not a team player, but maybe in a few years she will decide to become a team player.
Oh, Charlotte. And like siblings, everybody gets stressed out about
Yeah.
siblings. Charlie and Colton, they play together. They have the same friends. They do all kinds of stuff together. Charlie has no problem connecting with him. In fact, sometimes she understands him better than anybody else. She will help him get ready. She'll help him go to the washroom. Like they're very, very close.
Yeah.
I find a lot of people stress out about like, what are my kids going to do with a kiddo who's got Down syndrome?
Yeah.
And like realistically, like play,
Yeah.
talk, hang out. He watches TV shows.
Be their sibling, right? Be their sibling.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
like he has a best buddy. His little buddy plays hockey, and he's dying to go watch him play hockey. Colton loves hockey. He
Oh,
wants to go and cheer his buddy on.
yeah.
If the games weren't at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, like we would be there.
Yeah,
However,
no, you only go to those games when it's your own child.
exactly
You
that.
cheer
So I'm
another
like,
child on, you're like, no, not doing it.
and like he loves Wildcat Willie, which is like the mascot here for the hockey team. Like obsessed. We're having Wildcat Willie birthday party, and like
That's
so
impressive. I love
yeah,
that he loves it,
I
right?
mean,
Like it's like a regular little guy, right?
yeah, he has his interests, and I feel like people think like, oh, they don't have interests or they can't
Yeah.
communicate that stuff. Like he is very much. He likes hockey. He loves whales and fish and sharks and dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. He loves babies. He could hold a baby all day long every day. He's a little rough,
Aw.
but he loves them.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things people I think stress out about, but
Yeah.
especially fostering and bringing someone into their home with a special need. Like I'm honestly, if I was to pick out of all of them, even not knowing all the things I know, I would still pick Down syndrome. They are sweet. They're kind. I mean, they're just little balls of light for sure. They do get
Oh,
angry.
that's so awesome. So are there any myths out there that you think people should know about? Because, I'll give you one, for example, and I remember you spoke about it on something you posted, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, is about that kids with Down syndrome are always happy. See, I saw it. I remember you talking about this because as we as society walk around, kids with Down syndrome or even adults with Down syndrome present with a smile on their face. And our immediate thought is, oh, well, they're always happy. And I remember you talking about this, I don't know when it was, about that's maybe one of those myths.
It definitely is. I mean, they're just the same. They have the same emotions as everybody else. Like Colton gets angry. He gets really angry and he'll yell. He will call names when he decides that he's had enough of someone.
Yeah.
Like those are things he does do. However, he's also far easier to turn around with a joke,
Yeah.
or he's the first, like my sister took him to a movie last week, and every time the whale said I love you, he turned around and gave her a kiss and said TT I love you. And like,
Oh,
so though they're
my heart.
I would say they're much more free with
Yeah.
their love and
Yeah.
affection than say somebody who has more inhibition.
Right.
I think that's why everyone thinks they're happy
Mm-hmm.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's more that they're just, if he's angry, he's like unabashedly like, I'm
Yeah.
furious. However, if he's happy, like he doesn't care who knows it.
Yeah.
He's going to sing and dance and play. He has no inhibition about dancing in the street. He does not care. He just, I'm happy. So I think that's where
Oh,
people think like, oh, they're always
yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
No, they're just freer with their emotions than say a typical child may or may not be.
Right. Yeah.
I think the other one is that they can't play or they can't make friends. I will tell you, Colton walks up to school and every kid who sees him, I go to the playground and there's kids running up going, hi, Colton, you want to play? And I'm like, I don't even know who this kid is, but they know him from school because he just says hello and he walks
So his
around.
ability, his socialization skills are great.
Yes.
Whereas I think a lot of people would think, oh, they're reserved or they're afraid or they're not going to, because they don't talk or whatever it is, that they're not going to have friends. They're not going to have peers.
No.
They're going to be isolated.
Well, I think that it is a thing that people are worried about it. And honestly, I was when he was
Yeah.
little. I was like, oh God, here we go. But like he gets invited to birthday parties. He has friends in other grades that invite him. He goes to events and
Oh,
everyone's like, hi, Colton. Like he loves
everybody
to do
knows
stuff.
him. He's the
Yep. I
light,
mean,
right?
his school was like, oh, he does really well at live theater. They had like a live show thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but he's been going to theater and stuff since he was a baby. He
Yeah.
loves all that kind of stuff. He enjoys watching people on stage. And I think people think they can't do regular stuff with
Yeah.
their kiddos with Down syndrome. And I mean, aside from the swimming thing right now because of his ear infections, this kid does literally everything all the other kids do. You
Right.
name it, you can travel, you can he does what he does better than his sister traveling, like way better than her. The only thing he doesn't like is waiting in like the bag checkout line and the
Right.
security line. Like waiting's not his jam.
Do any
But
of us do it?
like
honestly,
I don't enjoy
I
it.
was like, do any of us like waiting for our bags and checking out or trying to get on a train or
No.
whatever? Like he comes by that, honestly. So that has nothing to do with Down
Well, I
syndrome.
mean,
That's just
like
life.
that doesn't exactly. So I think like you've got to remember they're fair. Like pretty much everything is like a regular, like a typical kiddo, typical person, except for the things may take longer for them to learn. Sometimes they need extra support communicating and learning to listen to other people when they say no, thank you. And personal space is not really their like they don't really understand that so
It's not
much.
his jam, right?
No, yeah, but like
Yeah.
it all depends. I know. So one of our board members, he is my age, and he is a world champion swimmer and a champion speed skater, and he sits on our board, and he
Awesome.
has 2 jobs, and he has a girlfriend, and he lives for like he just lives his life. Like I know
Yeah.
he comes over and he chit chats with Carlos. He was going to Portugal, so Carlos was teaching him some Portuguese words. Like you can just have a conversation.
Which
So
I think is so important. Like what you just said is that gentleman who's on the board, he's on the board, he's on board of directors, he's a swimmer, he's traveling, he's got a girlfriend. He's living life like any other person.
And I think that everybody needs to realize like they do live life like everybody else. They just may or may not need extra supports here or there, depending on who they are. But then again, you think your typical kids and adults may or may not need supports in different areas of their lives as well. So I think when thinking about fostering, I mean, honestly, Down syndrome, like it's not even scary.
Jackpot if you're
you literally you hit the jackpot. We're all, like, and there's so much support from your Down syndrome communities. If you connect with Down syndrome moms and stuff like that, like or dads, usually you're gonna find like this big welcoming family and community, and they'll help and support. And Ontario does have some pretty good supports. Now, autism does take the cake on most of the financial supports.
Right.
But with Down syndrome, your communities are usually fairly involved, and there's usually funding that you can find, there's supports. If you get in with a good Down syndrome community, you're like, I still am super connected to Niagara, and I'm connected here. I have lots of friends here. I'm on the board of directors here. I mean, I do all of that stuff here for Colton also. And I feel
because
like
you have all sorts of free time.
all the time in the world, let me
You
tell
know,
you.
because, you know, on top of being on the board of directors and looking after your two kids, you also run Mommy Connections Moncton, right?
Yes, I run a Mommy Connections, and actually, I've got a couple moms who I've convinced to come out who have kids with Down syndrome who were worried about like other moms like connecting with their
Yeah.
kiddos and kids, and I was like, just come, it's fine. Like they're gonna have to figure it out. I don't care. Like just let's go. And then it was totally fine. Like the kids were playing, nobody, moms are chatting because it's the same stuff. Like
It's
you're
so hard, right? Because as society, we worry about biases, right? We worry about
yeah,
what others are going to think and what their preconceived notions are. And so there's
yeah,
poor moms who just didn't want to come out because they just weren't sure if their own kids were going to be accepted because of their, you know, special needs, because
yeah,
their exceptionalities, because they're not regular. Like to be able to
yeah.
say, yeah, join in with the regular kids. They're all kids. Like at the end of the day,
Yeah.
they're all
They're
kids.
all kids.
Every
They're all
child has
kids.
an exceptionality, whatever it might be, right? Like, so maybe your child
100%.
doesn't sleep. I have a neurotypical childhood and they don't sleep. And you have a child who's got Down syndrome, and maybe you have a child who's on the autism spectrum. They're all kids at the end of the day, right?
100%. And honestly, Down syndrome patients, using your voice when you need something and finding a community. And like even with foster parents, like I said, I have a couple friends who have adopted and who have fostered. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing is finding community and kind of finding the supports in that community and using your voice at the school so that they get what they need there.
Okay. So
Because
that
you
was one of my next questions, or one of my, before we, you know, I don't want to, no rush to wrap or anything, but I was wondering about school. Wondered about school. How, because I know you and I were talking earlier on, like out in Moncton, school ends at 1 o'clock. So it's a little bit of a shorter day, but here in Ontario, we have, you know, the full day school.
yes.
What does school look like? What's, you know, like obviously you get him registered in school, but he's not developmentally
So,
kind of at the same level as the other kids in his class. So what, was he in a special classroom? Is he in mainstream? How does
no,
that work?
so usually like Ontario is so it really depends if you're going to go Catholic or public,
Right.
as to what so public is not inclusive. They have specialized classrooms. You have to fight or not, well, I shouldn't say that in every school again. Like but they usually have specialized classrooms, and if you don't want your child in that class all the time, you need to advocate.
Right.
Any kiddo I know that's in public school is in a regular,
Mainstream.
typical classroom for the most part. And then they have resource teams. Some of them have EAs, some of them share EAs with other kiddos. Catholic school, same thing, but Catholic schools don't have those, not till high school do they have
Right.
like the different class. Again, there's like section 21, all those sorts of different classrooms. However, most kids with Down syndrome don't need that. They need one-to-one supports. They learn slower, so you may need extra supports on literacy and math and that kind of stuff. And even like a lot of them will wander away, so you need to
Right.
have extra eyes on them. The biggest thing I've learned is whole child. So when you're starting to register your kiddo for school at any grade, the first thing you should do is ask for a meeting with OT, physio, speech, pediatric doctor, the resource team, everybody, and come together as a team, figure out who this kid is, what the medical stuff is, what the delays are, and kind of work together to figure out a proper like path for them.
Right.
Um, but that's both sides, both Catholic
Yeah.
and public. Here, there's only public school. There isn't any Catholic school here.
Okay.
There's French. There's a
Immersion.
French board,
Oh,
and then
French word.
there's
Okay.
there's a
Not French
full
immersion,
French.
just straight French. Okay.
Okay, and then there's the English. But in English now, Colton is going into grade 1, so he can either go French immersion or he can go English prime. But then English prime ends up in French immersion anyway in grade 4 or 5, which whatever.
So he's
So
going to learn some French even if he doesn't want to.
yeah. And like whatever it is, what it
Yeah.
is. But really you need to make sure that they have the supports they need in the school. So you have to
Okay.
be a voice. A lot of people don't understand, a lot of schools don't understand that kids with Down syndrome, they have tiny little passageways. So when they get a cold, their runny noses and coughs last like 100 years. Like it never.
Oh,
So like Colton used to get sent home all the time, and I finally called the doctor and I was like, "Okay, like I need to know, this is
yeah.
ridiculous. Like he's not sick, he's just taking forever to clear. Like it's not green, he doesn't have a fever. It is what it is." So getting the school to kind of understand some of those biological things.
Right. Which is
Key.
important, right? Because as you said, you were just a little bit ago talking about tongues. You said small passages, right? So they're going to present with these colds, as you said, the last 100 years. oh my gosh, like right now, they're sent home when they're sick, right? So he would be home more times than he would ever be at
Oh
school.
yeah, he
How
was
does he
home
actually
all the
get the
time.
learning?
It was
Yeah,
ridiculous. And I was like, okay. So my pediatric doctor was like, yeah, no problem. Here's a
yeah,
note, whatever. It's that's sort of gone away. But really, that's the biggest thing I would say. And like
okay,
taking breaks, telling them to give them breaks throughout the day to make things a little bit easier on them and working on some of the other skills, OT and physio. He has an OT at the school that we pay for. He
okay,
has physio through the school. He has speech through the school. So there's just getting all of those like moving parts working together is
yeah.
kind of the key.
Well, it's a
Um,
team, right? And it's everybody being on board and a part of and active as a part of the
yeah,
team, right? Like,
yeah.
because
But that's
not
similar to
everybody's gonna,
any other kid. Like
yeah,
realistically, all of the things I'm saying, like you could be doing for any kid in your household, depending on what they
yeah,
need and what's going on. It's just that sometimes your little guy with Down syndrome may not be able to tell you what's
yeah,
going on, which is the biggest struggle. Like Colton, while he speaks and he tells me all kinds of things, he can't tell me how his day went other than like
right,
it was good, I had fun, like whatever. So I struggle with that a lot, like
right.
communication with the school, because I don't know what they're like. I don't know
Are they doing
because
math? Are they doing English? Are they doing science?
yeah,
What did you do?
like
Right? Because
what
he
is
can't tell you
happening,
that. You had fun anyway.
or even like the supports they put in place. I don't know if they're using them or what's happening. So I have to have more communication than maybe a typical parent would have. But then again, I have friends with typical kids that he's struggling with this at school and we have to communicate about this. So
Yeah.
it really isn't, it
Is
isn't
it any
because he has
different?
Down syndrome. There
May
really
not be
isn't
any
a
difference.
huge difference. And I feel like parents, like the foster parents and stuff, they get all caught up in Down syndrome. But like honestly, he's no different than Charlotte for most of that's like Charlie, we're planning for kindergarten for next year, and she's wild. So I'm like, I'm like, be prepared.
She's
I'm
not a
sure you're
team
gonna
player,
love me.
remember? She already told you
She
at
doesn't do
2.
teams well, and she's all over the place,
Yeah,
and she doesn't sit still, and she loves to talk back and tell you what she's going to be
yeah,
doing. And so those sorts of things are Colton doesn't do that. Like he's
yeah,
not going, he may tell you no, or I'm not ready yet, but he's not going to tell you that he's going over here to do
yeah,
this, and that, whether or not. So it all depends on your child, right?
yeah.
But World Down Syndrome Day, like his class is having a pizza party. They read books about it. They really celebrate
And
him
I think
and
that's
Down syndrome.
so great, right? Because it's that
Yeah.
inclusivity, right? It's that this is an important day for him. He's a part of our classroom. Let's acknowledge it, but like let's educate the kids in the classroom. And it may
Yes.
be like you're going to sit down and do a lecture, but it's reading books, it's reading stories to help them understand where Colton is coming from and
A
why he's
hundred
different, right?
percent. 100%. And Jen, if you ever do have a child, like a kiddo with Down syndrome, like a foster parent coming in, I have like a welcome page that I send the first day of school to
Yeah,
all the parents. So I give it to the teacher and it's like it explains to the kids in like kid terms, like why does Colton have a one-to-one? Why can't Colton talk to me the same way that my other friend can
yeah,
talk to me? And it's just like answering general questions
yeah.
that little kids usually have. And then I put my information, like if you're look, and then at the bottom it has like recommendations for books you can read with your kiddo about Down syndrome. So I send it home at the beginning of every year so that
And so
when
does
the
that go to all, you have them give it to all the kids in the classroom?
every kid.
That's awesome, Jade. Oh my gosh, look at you.
So then that way, like if parents have questions, they or their kids come home with questions, and they have the words,
Yeah.
and if they don't, they can connect with me and ask me. So I send that every year. So that's something I can share with if you do end up having a
Yeah, I
foster.
would love, you know what, I will keep that in mind if we get any kids coming forward and they're looking at the school piece, because I just think, oh my gosh, like what a great resource, right? It's just to say,
And it
hey,
would be
this is
nice
who
for
I
like
am.
kids with autism too, right? Like
Yeah,
so you can have the words to explain why your child does certain things or why they need
yeah.
extra support or whatever.
That's
Um,
so good. Like I don't know that
yeah,
a lot of us would think about that, right? It's almost this, it's saying, you know what? Let's talk about what it is my son needs from your children in the classroom and answer those kids' questions who might be afraid to ask and the parents might be afraid to ask, right? It's,
yeah,
you know, you're saying to your other parents who are in the classroom, well, I know there's somebody with special needs in the classroom, and that hush hush conversation versus let's just talk about the elephant in the room, right? Like let's
yeah.
get
And I 100% like I've done it the last 2 years of kindergarten. I'll do it next year. And I just
yeah,
adjust it as they get a little older because the questions change or whatever.
yeah,
But I found like the teachers really liked it because it gave them some words. And I always gift a book about Down syndrome to the teacher at the beginning of the year so
right.
that they have like resources in their classroom. Um, but yeah, I mean, realistically, he's no different than anybody else. He just takes a lot more patience
Yeah.
for some things. And I have to remember because I'm like really go, go, go. So, and Colton,
No, really,
not.
Jade? No
Ah,
way.
he's my slow poke. He likes to chill. He likes
Yeah,
to check out that bug walking down the street, like those sorts of things. And
yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, okay. Like we went hiking and Colton was like, yeah, about that. I'm gonna sit on the sled and you can pull me wherever you like, but I am not
Okay,
walking.
I'm with them. I'm with them on it. You know what? I'm happy to go hiking. If you're going to pull me on a sled, I am more than happy to go hiking.
And like I melted down at first because it was like a huge hill, and I was like, "Can you just walk?" And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely not." So then I was like, "Okay, you need to like take a second, breathe, and realize that he can't do it. Like, not
Yeah,
that he can't do it, it's exhausting.
yeah.
And by the time he gets to the top, the rest of that walk will be game over, and then I have to take him back. So
Yeah.
you just have to like
But I
change your
think,
day a
you
little
know
bit.
what? You just said something that was so good to hear is that you're human and that this is tiring and you were having a meltdown because he
Yep.
wasn't able to do something, and that's okay. And I think
Yeah,
it's good for us to
100%.
talk about that, saying that as the parent, as the guardian, as the caregiver of a child with special needs, it's okay to have an off day. It's okay to have a meltdown. It's okay to
100%.
be
And
exhausted
that's why I
or
always say find a friend.
yeah,
Like even as a foster parent, find a friend with someone else with who has a child with Down syndrome or
yeah,
something like that so you can just find a friend
yeah,
because otherwise it's very lonely.
yeah. And
So,
that's where it gets hard, right? Is if you're all alone. So like such key words is like find that friend. Yeah, who can
yes.
you call, right? What is, I don't know what, there was
Yeah.
that game show of like call a friend. There was that game show,
Call a friend,
call a friend.
100%.
So you know,
Call a
you gotta
friend.
find your friend to call, right? Because those are
Yes.
all key things.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all that you have done because I just think you've kind of dispelled some myths and shared some information. Is there anything else I didn't ask about or we didn't talk about that you think, you know what, it'd be really important for somebody who is considering caring for a child with Down syndrome or, you know, just wants
Okay.
more information or is just curious, whether it be, you know, a community member, somebody who happens to fall upon this podcast, one of our foster parents, whatever, that we should share?
I mean, I think honestly, I think we went through really everything. Really, you just need to find a village. You need to be patient and you need to look at them like they're just kids
Yeah.
or young adults. And they may take a little bit extra time to do things, but in the long run, they're still just people and they want to be loved and they want to have friends and they want to be included. So if you can remember all of that, fostering a child with Down syndrome or parenting, it's no different. It's just that they make you stop and smell the roses
Yeah.
sometimes where
Yeah.
you didn't want to do that.
But you know what? Is it a bad thing to stop and smell the roses? Never.
Baby stage lasts a lot longer, so it's a lot of fun when everybody else is
Yeah.
rushing around and you're still snuggling. That
Yeah.
that that was nice.
Well, so you know what? Those are all those really positive things that we maybe would forget, right? Is that
Yeah.
we have our children, right? I have almost Aspen will be 12 next week and Tristan's 20. And I know it's shocking. I have a 20-year-old, what happened? And I have a 12-year-old who thinks she's 22. So but you know what, like we try to grow our kids up, right? We talk about we can't wait until they're able to be home on their own. We can't wait till they can drive a car. We can't wait till they move out. And the reality is that when those things happen, all of a sudden we miss those early days, right? And
Yeah.
you're saying like you got to bask in that baby stage, which
Yeah.
you know was wonderful, right? And you just said like
Yeah.
you stop and smell the roses. It forces you to slow down a little bit, which maybe isn't a bad thing, right? Like it isn't a bad
It's
thing.
great. No, and I mean, it's been kind of nice because Charlotte's
Yeah.
on overdrive and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna hang
Well,
out
you
in
have to
this.
have one balance out the other, right? So one's on overdrive, a slow poke, right? You know, eventually you hit the middle ground, right? And so, you know, I think those are all really great things to take away. And you said one of my favorite phrases, and I've always said is it takes a village to raise a child. It absolutely does. And that's every
Absolutely.
child. That isn't just a child with Down syndrome. That isn't a child who's got autism. That isn't a foster child. That is every child that is out there in
Yes.
this world today needs a village to wrap around.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I think like just celebrate World Down Syndrome Day and enjoy it. And if you foster a child with Down syndrome, don't stress. They are not like any different and it's not much harder at all. So
Patience, find your
patience,
village.
patience, patience. But you need
Patience,
patience
find your
around you.
village, get the supports in place, ask
Yes,
questions, be their advocate, all those things.
100%.
Yeah. So Thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much. I know you've got to go get your little lady from school because you have those shortened school days there in
All good
Moncton.
times.
But thank you for giving me your time, sharing your knowledge, your wealth of wisdom, everything you do, for just being who you are, Jade Medeiros. We love you to death. Wish you lived here
Wow,
in Ontario.
thank you. Oh my God, you want
Mwah.
to hire me from afar? You come
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Sign yourself off, and maybe we'll do this
Have
again
a
one
good
day for
day.
something else.
Yes. Oh,
All
I'm
right.
down anytime.
Perfect.
Bye,
I am too.
Jen.
Talk to you later.